trapped in the void. The snow had swallowed the campus overnight. By morning, the quad at Hawthorne University was a blank field of white, the statues half buried, and the clock tower silent under a sheath of ice. Ethan Caldwell trudged through it, the crunch of his boots the only sound in a world drained of color. The cold pressed through his gloves, through his coat, through his ribs, until it felt like his blood itself had slowed. He checked his phone, 8:43 a.m. The Psychology of Abnormal Behavior final was scheduled for 9. Building C loomed ahead, a Gothic mass of stone and spires, older than the state itself. Legend said parts of it had been a hospital before the Civil War. Ethan used to laugh at those stories. This morning, they felt truer than the snow beneath him. He reached the main door, tugged the handle, and stepped into a breath of warmth and silence. No students chatting. No footsteps. Only the faint hum of old radiators. "Hello?" His voice cracked against the marble walls. Down the corridor, fluorescent lights flickered like dying fireflies. A sheet of paper taped to the door of room 314 read in looping handwriting. "Exam in progress. Take a seat. No talking. No supervisor necessary." Ethan frowned. No supervisor necessary? That wasn't normal. Still, he pushed the door open. About 24 students already sat spaced apart at wooden desks, coats draped over chairs, pencils scratching faintly. The air smelled of dust and stale coffee. At the front of the room lay a neat stack of exam papers, each sealed with a crimson stamp. Ethan took one and sat in the back row. The first page contained standard instructions, name, ID, date. The second page, however, stopped him cold. Printed in perfect black ink was a spiral diagram, a twisting metallic structure, like a turbine or some ancient machine photographed in motion. Its lines seemed to curve inward endlessly, pulling the eye toward a dark core. Below it, a single question. "Describe what you remember." Ethan stared. The paper swam in front of him. He knew that image, knew it too well. A warehouse in Ohio. The smell of oil and rust. His sister Lily, laughing as they explored the abandoned floor. And then, nothing. A hole in memory. A scream cut off halfway through his mind. He blinked, shaken, and looked around. No one else seemed disturbed. Pens moved, eyes down. But when he glanced toward the front, the clock above the board had stopped. The second hand twitched in place, refusing to move. The air pressure changed. It was subtle at first, a soft contraction of the room, like lungs exhaling. The overhead lights dimmed, buzzing faintly. Ethan rubbed his arms. From the left side of the hall came a creak. One of the students, a tall girl with dark curls, Mia Torres, he recognized, raised her head. "Is anyone else hearing that?" No one answered. But then the sound came again, a long, low groan from the walls. Like something heavy shifting within the masonry. A few students whispered. Someone stood and went to the door. The handle didn't move. He twisted harder. Nothing. He shoved his shoulder into it. "This isn't wood." Ethan approached. The door, which had been oak moments ago, was now solid concrete, cold, gray, seamless with the wall. The brass handle was gone, fused into stone. He backed away instinctively. "What the hell?" Gasps rippled through the room. One girl ran to the windows. Oh my God, they're gone." Where there should have been a view of the snow-covered campus was now a series of black, glass-like panes, opaque and mirror-smooth. They reflected the room back at them, but twisted, their faces stretched, colors inverted, like heat warped. Video footage. "Okay," Ethan said, forcing calm. "Maybe it's some projection trick? A psychological experiment?" No one responded. The murmurs grew, mixing with the hum of the lights. Then the hum shifted pitch. It deepened into something organic, like a throat clearing behind the walls. Ethan's skin crawled. Mia moved beside him, her jaw tight. We need to find another way. Out. Basement, service hallway, anything. Lucas was already pulling out his phone. No signal. He frowned. Wi-Fi's working though. That's weird. He opened the browser. The homepage loaded. Instantly, but not Hawthorne's network page. The screen filled with strings of symbols, red and jagged, spiraling across a black background. The characters flickered like they were alive. Then went dead. Lucas dropped it with a curse. It fried my phone. They all flinched as the ceiling light popped, raining sparks. The emergency lights clicked on, blood-red, dim, throbbing. And from the far end of the hall came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps, echoing through the corridor outside. Everyone froze. Maybe a janitor, someone whispered. Mia exhaled shakily. We can't stay here. She and Ethan tried the back door, the one that led to the storage wing. It, too, had vanished. The hallway behind it was replaced by a blank surface. As if someone had poured cement over reality. Okay, Ethan muttered. That's not possible. Mia met his eyes. Neither is any of this. Minutes bled together. Some students pounded the walls. Until their hands bled, others prayed, one sat whispering to herself. The air grew colder. The smell of iron filled the room. The mirror windows flickered, showing flashes of something moving behind. The reflections, dark tendrils, shapes that didn't fit the geometry of the room. Ethan forced himself to sit. His exam paper still lay open on the desk. The spiral machine shimmered faintly. For a moment, he thought he saw it moving, rotating inward, consuming its own lines. Words began appearing beneath the printed question, forming letter by letter in his own handwriting. Do you remember the sound she made? His breath caught. The pen wasn't in his hand. He shoved the paper away. Mia noticed. What is it? He couldn't answer. His throat felt locked. The words on the paper vanished, leaving the page blank again. The walls moaned once more, deeper this time, and something in the foundation shifted. Desk slid a few inches toward the center of the room. The entire building seemed to tilt, as if gravity had found a new direction. Students screamed. A row of lights burst overhead. Darkness swept through the room, red strobes pulsing like a. They could see movement, shadows pacing, too tall to be people. Mia reached for the handle. Ethan caught her wrist. Wait. She turned. In the red emergency light, her eyes looked almost black. Ethan, she whispered, if this is a test, who's grading us? The question hung between them, swallowed by the dark. And then the door began to open, from the other side. The door opened on its own. Metal hinges shrieked, echoing down the stairwell like an animal in pain. Ethan flinched back, raising his phone's flashlight. The beam caught a corridor lined with broken lockers. Their doors twisted open as if pried apart by hands that didn't care for hinges or locks. Moist air drifted out, cold, metallic, with a faint sweetness underneath, the smell of something long dead but refusing to rot. Mia tightened her grip on the light. Basement maintenance, maybe? Let's move. They stepped through. The floor was slick with condensation, concrete sweating under the red glow. That bled from somewhere far ahead. The sound of dripping water followed every footstep. Pipes groaned overhead, alive with a pulse that wasn't mechanical. After 50 feet, they reached a fork, left. The building. It's folding. I saw the hallway upstairs twist in on itself. Like paper burning. Before Ethan could answer, the overhead bulbs flared and died, plunging them into darkness. Something moved in the black, brushing Ethan's shoulder, a whisper of fabric or breath. Then came a sound like static, but wet, hsshhhhhh, snap, hsshhhhh. A radio? No, too close. The flashlight blinked back on. The corridor was empty. Only their reflections remained, faint, warped, mirrored in the sheen of the wet floor. And in one reflection, Ethan saw an extra shape. Small. Barefoot. Standing just behind him. A child. He spun. Nothing. His lungs seized. For a second he smelled the same rusted oil scent from that warehouse in Ohio. He remembered Lily's laugh echoing between metal beams, and how it had cut off mid-word. Ethan? Mia's voice was distant, underwater. You okay? He nodded too fast. We go left. Archives. Lucas swallowed. Why? Because that's where the records are. Floor plans. Maybe phones. He didn't add what he really thought, that something wanted them to go right. They reached the archive room. The door hung half off its frame. Inside, hundreds of file boxes lay open, paper scattered like snowdrifts. Every document was stamped with the same red sigil, the spiral emblem from their exam sheets. Mia brushed dust from one. The label read Hawthorne Psychiatric Study, 1956 to 1971. She flipped it open. Photographs slipped out, faces of patients with black bars over their eyes. Under each was a single word written in cramped handwriting, Subject 6A, Memory Erasure Trial. Ethan stared at one photo. The room in the background looked identical to their exam hall. This is impossible, Mia whispered. This was decades before the psych department even existed. Lucas snorted weakly. Maybe this is the psych department. Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered again, this time revealing writing scrawled across the far wall in something dark and shiny. Remember what you are forgotten to forget. The letters dripped slowly, each drop making a soft patter on the papers below. Ethan's ears filled with a low hum. It wasn't from the lights or the pipes. It was inside his skull. His vision trembled. The photos on the wall seemed to breathe. When he blinked, the archive room was gone. He stood in a different place, an abandoned warehouse lit by sunlight leaking through broken windows. Dust motes drifted through the air like tiny ghosts. Lily, he called. A laugh answered, hi, familiar. He turned and saw her, 10 years old, ponytail bouncing, running toward the spiral machine. A skeletal engine of steel and copper, rotating endlessly without noise. Don't touch it, he shouted. She stopped, looked back, smiled, and reached out. The machine flared with a light that wasn't light, a collapse of space that folded inward. The scream returned, half-formed, sliced short. Then silence. When Ethan opened his eyes again, he was back in the basement. Mia was shaking him. You blacked out. I saw her, he whispered. Lily. Lucas's phone buzzed suddenly, startling them all. Its screen glowed though the battery had been dead minutes ago. Lines of text appeared on it, each typed in real time, as if by invisible fingers. Do you see it yet, Lucas? The call wasn't from outside. It was from here. Lucas dropped the phone, backing away until he hit the wall. No. No, no, stop, his voice cracked. That call saved my life. The phone rang. A sharp, old-fashioned ring, vibrating on the floor. He stared at it, breathing hard. Then, almost against his will, he picked it up. Hello? Ethan only heard one side of the conversation, fragmented between gasps. Who is this? I didn't, no, that's not what happened. His expression twisted from confusion to terror. He pressed the phone harder to his ear. Whispering, don't say her name. Don't you dare. Static exploded. Lucas screamed and hurled the phone into the wall. It shattered, releasing a pulse of red light that rolled across the floor like smoke. The emergency lights flickered faster now, syncing with the beating in Ethan's temples. The air tasted like iron filings. Mia grabbed his sleeve. "We have to move. Now." They stumbled back into the corridor. But it wasn't the same corridor anymore. The walls had stretched, ceilings arched into impossible heights. Doors repeated endlessly, identical, each marked with a spiral sigil. Elbow, glass shattering. She pulled out the axe, testing its weight. "If the walls want to trap us, we make new ones." Before Ethan could argue, she swung at the nearest wall. The blade met no resistance, just sound. The wall rippled like water, sending shockwaves of black liquid outward. The reflections on the mirror windows convulsed. From within those reflections, something moved. Shapes leaned out of the glass, stretching their heads through like faces pressing against thin plastic. They looked like the students upstairs, but wrong. Eyes hollow, mouths too wide. Teeth arranged in spirals. One whispered, perfectly mimicking Ethan's voice, "You brought it back." Mia screamed and swung again, shattering the mirror. The fragments scattered across the floor, but each shard still reflected those figures, dozens of them, whispering his name over and over. The corridor dimmed. Their breath came out in visible clouds. Somewhere, music began playing, a warped lullaby, distant but clear, as if from an old music box buried under ice. Lucas laughed suddenly. Not in humor, in panic. "We're dead. We've been dead the whole time." "Shut up," Mia hissed. He slammed his fists against the wall, screaming until his voice shredded. The building answered with a deep groan, and the floor beneath them cracked open, not wide, just enough to reveal darkness. Widened. Fingers of darkness reached out, thin, sharp, like glass claws. One brushed Lucas's ankle. He froze, eyes rolling white, and collapsed. His body convulsed as veins blackened under his skin. Then, slowly, he stood again. "Lucas?" Mia whispered. He turned toward them, mouth stretching too far. "Do you remember me?" the voice asked, but it wasn't his. They ran. Down corridors that looped, upstairs that led down, through classrooms that reappeared behind them. The whole building throbbed, alive, breathing. Every window now showed the same image, the spiral machine, turning. At last they stumbled into the main lecture hall again, but it was empty. The desks were gone. The walls had peeled back, revealing raw concrete etched with spirals carved deep as veins. Ethan fell to his knees. The exam paper lay on the floor in front of him, miraculously untouched. A new line had appeared at the bottom. Section 2, Group Collapse. Proceed to the lower level to continue assessment. Mia grabbed his shoulder. "We're not doing this." But the floor beneath them was already moving, tilting downward, pulling them toward the same stairwell, now yawning open like a throat. The red lights dimmed to black. Somewhere deep below, a metallic voice spoke again, soft, almost compassionate. "Remember, every answer must come from within." And then the floor gave way. The fall felt endless. Ethan didn't remember hitting the ground, only the moment his scream turned inward, swallowed by the dark. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on something soft and cold. For a moment he thought it was snow. Then he realized it was ash. The air shimmered with motes of gray dust that floated like spores, illuminated by a dim crimson glow far above. The ceiling, if it was a ceiling, shifted in slow waves, translucent and veined, like the inside of a living lung. Mia groaned beside him. "We're still alive?" Ethan sat up, his back throbbing. "I think so." All around them stretched an immense chamber, a cathedral of bone and metal, formed from the guts of the building itself. Pipes grew from the floor like roots, walls breathed faintly. And the sound of dripping echoed with no source. It smelled of iron, ozone, and decay. In the distance, faint lights flickered, candles, maybe. Or eyes. Mia pushed herself up, brushing ash from her coat. Where's Lucas? Ethan scanned the chamber. A trail of footprints led away from them, bare feet, not boots. They were too small to belong to Lucas. He swallowed. We follow. The footprints led through a narrow passageway ribbed with rusted pipes and black cables that pulsed faintly, as though blood moved inside them. Each step they took echoed twice, once in front of them, once behind. At first Ethan thought it was an acoustic quirk. Then he heard the echo breathing. They emerged into a wider corridor where the walls were covered with torn posters, student announcements. This place, it's feeding on time. Or on us, Ethan murmured. A faint humming rose from below. The same pitch as the spiral machine in his memory. He felt it vibrating in his teeth. They followed the sound. At the end of the corridor was a vast auditorium, its seats collapsed inward around a glowing pit. Dozens of students were there, or what remained of them. Their faces were blank, their eyes hollow, their bodies kneeling in concentric rings around the pit. Each held a shard of mirror in their hands, angled toward the center, reflecting a spiral of light that rotated faster than any I could track. Mia clutched Ethan's arm. Are they alive? As if in answer, one of the figures lifted its head. The motion was stiff, puppet-like. Its lips moved but produced no sound. Then, faintly, Ethan heard it, inside his mind rather than his ears. Repeat the lesson. Accept the void. A shiver crawled through him. His fingers itched too. The kneeling students rotated their heads in perfect synchronization, eyes glowing faint red. The mirrors caught the light from the pit and threw it outward. A beam of white fire sliced across the floor, missing Mia's leg by inches. Run! They sprinted toward a service door behind the stage, the sound of hundreds of mirrors shattering in pursuit. The light burned through wood, metal, air, anything it touched. Ethan slammed the door shut and wedged a pipe through the handles. On the other side, a dozen hands clawed against it, flesh scraping stone. Mia leaned against the wall, panting. What was that? An exam, Ethan said bitterly. A practical one. The hallway beyond descended into darkness again. It felt colder the deeper they went, as though they were walking not through space but through someone's memory, one that hated being remembered. Halfway down, a soft light flickered ahead. They approached cautiously. It came from a room that looked completely normal, fluorescent lights, tiled floor, vending machines humming quietly. A laminated sign read Faculty Lounge. It shouldn't have existed here. Mia hesitated. This feels wrong. Everything feels wrong, Ethan said, stepping inside. For a moment, the warmth almost felt real. The smell of burnt coffee and floor wax. A couch, an unplugged TV. Then he saw the clock on the wall. The pen beside it was still wet with ink. Something flickered in the reflection of the vending machine glass. Ethan turned, and saw Lucas standing behind him. But Lucas's face was wrong. Before. Back up, Lucas. He ignored her. It's not so bad here. You stop feeling things. You stop remembering. That's the point. His skin rippled, seams appearing along his jaw, his hands. They opened like paper cuts, bleeding black light. Ethan stepped back, heart hammering. You're not him. Lucas tilted his head. Aren't I? You made me remember, Ethan. You called me here. The vending machines began vibrating violently, glass cracking. Every digital screen flashed the same spiral pattern. Then Lucas's body convulsed. Bones snapped audibly as his limbs elongated. Spine arching backward until he stood like a mantis, mouth splitting open from chin to sternum. From inside that maw came dozens of whispering voices, their classmates, crying, chanting, laughing. Mia swung the axe. The blade embedded deep into his neck, but instead of blood, smoke poured out, black and dense, screaming as it left him. The body dissolved into a pool of shadow that crawled toward the nearest vent. "Go," she shouted. They ran. The corridors twisted into a spiral now, physically curving as though the building were wrapping itself around a center point. Gravity shifted sideways, the floor became a wall. Ethan grabbed pipes to steady himself, his breath fogging in the air. Somewhere behind them, the smoke hissed, chasing through cracks and vents. When they reached what looked like a mechanical room, they found the source of the humming. It was there, the machine from the exam image. No longer a diagram, but real, immense, filling the room. Between present and past, the walls turning from concrete to wood to raw flesh. Mia stared, speechless. "It's the same thing you saw as a kid." Ethan nodded, trembling. It took her. Lily. She touched it. He approached, unable to stop himself. The machine seemed to breathe with him, sinking to his pulse. In the reflection of its surface, he saw himself as a child again. Holding Lily's hand. Her voice echoed softly, "You said you'd remember me." Mia grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Don't. That's how it gets you. I have to know what it is." "Ethan." The machine pulsed. Light exploded outward, freezing everything mid-motion. Time shattered like glass. He stood alone now. The room stretched infinitely in all directions. From the black core of the machine, a figure emerged, tall, featureless, wearing a mask shaped like a spiral. Its voice came from everywhere. "You carry the seed of the void. You were chosen when you forgot." Ethan's throat tightened. "What do you want?" "To continue the test." He shook his head. "I'm done with your tests." The figure tilted its head, almost curious. "You misunderstand. You are the test." A hand seized his shoulder, Mia's. The vision broke. The machine still thrummed, but weaker now, its light flickering. "Ethan." "The ceiling's collapsing." Cracks ran through the walls. Dust fell like snow. The entire floor heaved. They sprinted toward a maintenance tunnel at the back. Behind them, the machine screamed, a sound like bending steel and human agony intertwined. The spiral on its surface unraveled, revealing only darkness beneath, and that darkness poured out like liquid night. They dove into the tunnel as the chamber imploded. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw faces in the collapsing smoke, Lily's among them, mouthing something he couldn't hear. Then everything went silent. They crawled through the tunnel for what felt like hours. It narrowed until they were forced to move on their stomachs, the air thick with dust and rot. Every scrape of their elbows echoed forever. Finally, a sliver of light appeared ahead. Mia coughed. "Please tell me that's outside." Ethan pushed forward, clawing through loose soil until he broke into cold air. Snow. They stumbled out into a clearing surrounded by pines heavy with frost. Knees, sobbing with relief. "We made it. We're out." Ethan looked around. The forest was silent, too silent. In the distance, faint lights glowed between the trees, warm and golden. A cabin. "Come on," he said. "Shelter." They trudged toward it through knee-deep snow, unaware that behind them, the aurora's colors were shifting, forming slow, spiraling shapes across the sky. The cabin looked like salvation. Smoke curled faintly from a crooked chimney, and a single lantern glowed in the frosted window, throwing a soft amber light across the snow. The place seemed impossibly ordinary after everything, the scent of pine resin, the crunch underfoot, the way the wind sighed through the branches instead of screaming. Mia reached the porch first, her breath hitching. "Someone's here." Ethan followed, every nerve ready to snap. He raised a trembling fist and knocked. After a moment, the door opened. A man stood there, older, 40, maybe 50, wrapped in a wool coat patched with duct tape. His eyes were pale, unfocused, but not unkind. He looked at them as though he'd been expecting this moment for years. "You made it," he said quietly. And an old rifle propped in the corner. Above the mantel hung a tarnished compass, its needle spinning lazily without direction. Mia sank to the floor beside the heat, shaking uncontrollably. Humorless smile. The experiment. The void. Whatever name they gave it where you came from. The word experiment lodged in Ethan's throat. "You mean Hawthorne University?" Caleb nodded once. "That's what it calls itself now. Back then, it was the Hawthorne Cognitive Research Institute. They were building a machine to map consciousness, find the boundaries of human perception. Only problem was, once they found the edge." He looked into the fire. Something looked back. Mia whispered, "The spiral." He glanced up sharply. "You've seen it." Ethan nodded. "It was on our exam papers. In the walls. Everywhere." "That's how it starts," Caleb said. "A pattern that remembers you. A doorway drawn into your mind. You don't step through it. It steps through you." The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. For a moment, Ethan saw one of the sparks hang there too long, flickering black instead of gold. Caleb continued, voice low. "It pulls people in, students, faculty, anyone who touches its mind. Once you're inside, the world rewrites itself to keep you here. Time folds. Doors close. You think you're escaping. But you're just moving deeper." Mia frowned. "Then how did you get out?" "I didn't," Caleb said. They stared. He gestured around the cabin. "Look close enough, and you'll see the seams. This snow, it's still part of it?" Caleb nodded. "The void feeds on hope. Every exit is just another entrance." Mia stood abruptly, knocking over the cup. "No. No, we came through solid ground." Did the snow feel cold?" Caleb interrupted. She froze. Ethan looked down at his hands. The frost clinging to his gloves wasn't melting. The air inside the cabin felt warm, yet his breath. "I can prove it." Caleb reached for a folded map on the table. It was covered in red marks, dozens of circles and symbols drawn over an outline of mountains and forest. He unfolded it, revealing that every red mark was connected by spirals. "I marked where people reappeared," he said. "Each time the void reset, it rebuilt this place using their memories. I've met hundreds over the years. Some tried to run north. Some dug down. Some burned themselves alive to wake up." He looked at them sadly. None of them ever left. A deep rumble shook the cabin. The fire guttered, turning blue. The walls vibrated as snow drifted from the rafters. Caleb rose, grabbing the rifle. "It's found us." Mia pressed against the wall. "What is it?" Caleb's voice dropped to a whisper. "The void's heart. The thing that makes the test run." Ethan felt it before he saw it, a low, pulsing hum that made his stomach twist, the same frequency that had haunted him since the exam. The light through the window flickered red, then black, as if the forest itself was blinking. Caleb threw open a trapdoor under the rug. "Downstairs. Root cellar. Go." They descended into darkness. Again, earth walls, crates of canned food, the smell of dirt and oil. The hum grew louder, closer, as though the cabin were being surrounded by 1,000 unseen machines. Ethan crouched beside Mia. Inside their skulls. The dirt ceiling rippled like water, and through it seeped shadows shaped like people, inverted silhouettes with white eyes and no mouths. They dropped silently to the floor. Carried, slicing through its torso. The shadow didn't fall, it simply reformed, thicker, its limbs lengthening into hooked claws. "Run!" Ethan yelled. They bolted toward the narrow passage at the back of the cellar. The shadows followed silently, their steps perfectly synchronized with Ethan's heartbeat. The tunnel sloped downward again, impossibly deep, until the dirt turned to concrete. Then to tile. When they burst out, they found themselves in a hallway, white, sterile, fluorescent lights humming above. It was the psychology building. Ethan's breath caught. "We're back." The corridor was empty except for one thing, a mirror at the end of the hall. Their reflections waited inside it, unmoving. As they approached, the reflections began to smile. On the floor lay another exam paper. Ethan picked it up. The question on it read, "Final assessment, define escape." He felt something shift behind him. The air grew dense. The mirror rippled like liquid. And the reflection of the hallway turned pitch black except for three figures, Ethan, Mia, and Caleb, standing perfectly still, watching them. From inside the glass, the reflected Ethan spoke. "You never left the exam room." Mia backed away. No, this isn't real. It can't be." The reflection smiled wider. "Real enough to grade." The floor began to dissolve under their feet, the tiles liquefying into a whirlpool of black glass. The spiral pattern emerged again, spinning faster and faster. The hum grew until it was language, a chorus of hundreds of voices whispering in. Of Lily's face frozen mid-laughter. Everything folded inward until there was nothing left but the spiral. When Ethan awoke, he was sitting at a wooden desk. The exam paper lay before him. The same room. The same cold silence. Around him, the students were writing, their pencils scratching in rhythm. He turned to Mia, sitting beside him, alive, calm, unaware. "Mia," he whispered. "We did this already." She looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the voice over the intercom crackled on. "Hawthorne University welcomes you to the final session of Abnormal Psychology 301. Please complete your assessment quietly. Remember, there are no supervisors necessary." Ethan stared at the paper. The spiral machine turned slowly in black ink. Below it, a new question had appeared. "Would you like to start again?" He looked around. The walls hummed faintly. The door was already gone. Far away, in a cabin that wasn't there, Caleb sat alone by a fire. That didn't burn. He crossed another red mark on his map and whispered to the empty air. Another pair made it through. The void still hungry. Outside, the forest swayed soundlessly under a sky of spiraling light. And somewhere within that light, unseen, something enormous turned once more, patient, endless, waiting for the next memory to step inside.